Hey, Himeko here. A little late, but it's time to tackle Himeko, a strong woman that loves cutting pizza, and maybe the most memed unit, but one of the most beloved ones in the Star Rail community. She doesn't have the raw self buffs of some units, but her multipliers are quite high in AoE, and with a team built to enable what she does best, she can dish out enough damage in high-end content. We'll go through her stats, abilities, and traces to find out what's making her deal less damage than people expect. Then we'll review her eidolons and her pros and cons to see if you should invest in her. We will then see her best relics and light cones and finish with teams. During this last segment, I'll also discuss if the brand new Topaz and Numby will enable her when they arrive in the next banner. So if you want more in-depth guides on any unit, including Topaz soon, subscribe to get them as soon as possible, and let me know in the comments if you've built your Himeko. Anyway, let's begin. Himeko is a 5-star fire unit that follows the erudition path. This path has had its fair share of distaste from the community, but its raw AoE power makes it very good for clearing content fast, and with more and more stages with summons, they're becoming nice to have. They are specialized in AoE rather than blast from destruction and single target from hunt. At level 80, she has a base HP of 1047, the highest base attack in the game at 756, a base defense of 436, and a low base speed of 96. Her energy cost is 120, and finally she is an erudition unit, so she won't be hit as much as the tankier paths. Her skills are all about doing big AoE damage, and then some more. It will do large AoE toughness damage, activating her talent and sweeping the board for, yes, more damage. She's a simple main DPS powerhouse. For increasing her damage, her skill should be prioritized, followed by her ultimate and talent. Her basics do not need leveling if you use her as a main DPS. So let's check out those abilities in depth and how to maximize them. Himeko's basic attack, Saw Blade Tuning, is basic, and she will use that pizza cutter to dish out a basic attack, dealing 30 toughness damage, regenerating 20 energy, as well as a skill point. Her skill, however, Molten Detonation, is a blast type skill, and she will deal a large amount of fire damage to the selected target and a smaller amount to adjacent ones. You'll be spamming her skill, and it's the largest part of her damage profile. This will do 60 toughness damage to the main target and 30 to the adjacent ones, as well as regen 30 energy. Her ultimate, Heavenly Flare, signals a space laser to do an even larger amount of damage, but to all enemies on the field this time, not just 3. Very useful for clearing a whole wave of enemies or any additional summons that can grant your team damage benefits. She will also regen 5 extra energy for every enemy defeated in this ultimate, so it's hard to truly gain a consistent benefit from this energy. This ultimate costs 120 energy, refunding 5 on use, and will do 60 toughness damage to everyone it hits. Now to her talent, Victory Rush. It is a core part of her damage profile, dealing more damage than her skill can when you have more than 2 enemies, so you want to consistently activate it for her maximum damage output. Making a team around her to benefit this talent is ideal, and she can activate this very frequently if done correctly. More on that in the team section though. So when an enemy is inflicted with weakness break, meaning their toughness bar has been broken, she will gain 1 charge stack up to 3 max. Elites and bosses will grant 3. Then when any ally performs an attack while she has 3 stacks, she will consume the stacks and perform a follow-up attack on all enemies on the field, dealing great damage and 30 toughness damage to all enemies hit. She gains 1 charge at the start of the battle, and will regen 10 energy per proc of this talent. Finally, her technique, Incomplete Combustion, is a dimension technique. She will create a dimension for 15 seconds, and any enemy you enter combat with in this dimension will cause enemies, at a 100% base chance, to receive 10% more fire damage for 2 turns. A vulnerability debuff. This is a straight 10% damage increase when not counting other vulnerabilities, and is nice to have. It will also apply to any new wave as dimension techniques do. Now onto her traces. Her first Ascension passive makes any attack have a 50% chance to inflict burn on enemies for 2 turns. They'll take 30% of Himeko's attack as damage when they take their turn, and is very negligible. And only consistent because of the amount of attacks she can dish out. You'd need 234% effect hit rate to guarantee it every attack, which you'd never want to do. Anyway, this dot is weaker than the level 1 basic attack and is why Himeko isn't used for her dot. This is just used to complement her second passive. This second passive will grant her skill a 20% damage increase against burning targets. A nice though weak bonus compared to Clara's unconditional 30% damage boost on counters. Her final passive is a real one and will grant her 15% crit rate when above 80% HP. Although conditional, this is easy to maintain. Shame it's conditional though, we can't have nice things apparently. Himeko will gain 22.4% fire damage in traces, which is very big, 18% attack, also great, and 10% effect resistance, which is whatever. As for eidolons, they are not all that great, and this is one of the reasons she doesn't scale well into the future. Her first will grant her 20% speed buff upon activating her talent. This can actually be up quite consistently, even permanently, and will thus result in more actions overall. Just hope it doesn't ruin your speed tuning. This resulted in another action in my rotation, and she thus gained a 4% DPS increase. Her second is copying Deluxe C1's homework and changing it a bit. More damage is good, but it's a small amount and not that much, all in a 5-star Eidolon. Hard to truly calculate, and even so, only resulted in the 3% DPS increase at half uptime. Her fourth Eidolon is weird too. When Himeko's skill specifically causes a weakness break, she will gain an additional point of charge now too. This is immense for her turn specifically, but you'd have to play around her breaking even more so now. To calculate its power, I gave her a talent every skill now instead of every 2 actions, resulting in an experimental 14% DPS increase. Her final Eidolon should be massive since it's the grand finale of an awesome character, but what it actually does is just add 2 extra hits onto her ultimate's damage. This does 40% of the base ult multiply value, so 99.36% at level 12 to 2 random enemies. It won't do any toughness damage or regen any additional energy, but it's an alright chunk of damage and will hopefully net you more kills for those 5 energy procs. 5.9% DPS increase. Now to hit that maximum damage, she'll be wanting the best relics you can afford, and that won't be the 4-piece Firesmith set despite it being a 5 DPS set. The benefits are pretty weak and conditional, and this set actually is weaker than 2 Musk 2 Fire, a much easier to farm alternative. You can also go 2 Hacker 2 Fire. Of course, since the Fire set is weak, the Quantum set is comparably nearly as strong even versus non-Quantum weak, unlike other DPS sets that require Quantum weak for Quantum set to come close. For Planar Ornaments, her best is Inert Salsotto if you're building a team for her breaks. But the calculations showed that Rutilant Arena and Spacing Station are pretty much equal too, seeing as attack percent is always nice and she does a lot of skill, ultimate and follow-up damage, so just go for the best substats as well as focusing on the main stats like always. Speaking of main stats, you'll want a crit chest, speed boots, fire orb and attack rope. Energy rope will result in ultimate sooner in most cases, but that won't result in more damage with the drop of a whole attack percent main stat. Since you've only got one, it's a bigger loss than usual. I don't like the idea of attack boots on Himeko unless you're going for a weird sub-DPS follow-upper, but I don't think that's optimal itself anyway. For substats, you want to prioritize crit, attack, and speed. For an endgame stat goal, a 70 to 140 crit ratio, 2.8k attack, and 121 to 134 speed would be ideal pre-traces and Lycone buffs, so this can go to 3k attack, more crit if you have Genius Repose or Before Dawn for example. Now onto the topic real quick of break effect. You may go for a 2-piece Thief or even 4-piece if you have it farmed, but of course you'd want to be facing Fire weak and you'd want to optimize your team around Himeko breaking. Fire has the strongest break damage in the game alongside physical at a 2x multiplier, but it also has the weakest break dot, so it's nice for front loading damage but only really that. I wouldn't go full break though, just a hybrid with either the set being Thief or the rope being break effect. Still focus on your crit and attack. If you do end up going some break effect, a unit like Pella will help out a lot, or Silverwolf into single targets. Break effect doesn't have many ways of increasing its damage, but Death Shred is one of them, boosting your base kit's damage on top of break effect's damage. Now onto Lycones. Of course her best will be Before Dawn, but I wouldn't spend to upgrade your Himeko with it, as we have some close contenders. Breakfast is free to play and comes close in damage, and Genius's Repose even closer, provided you get a kill every 3 turns, which is not hard on a main DPS. Her own Lycone is, like I've said in the past, a bit wonky, but with good break uptime and enemies on the field it can be quite solid, so why not use that Himeko? More often than not these days you'll have enough enemies to get a solid attack percent boost. In single target of course it will be quite poor though. Clamor and Birth of Self are not great, and the 3-star Lycones do not provide any big benefits, even my favourite Passkey's Energy won't. So after all that, what are her pros and cons and why is she considered weak? Well, for pros we have her nice multipliers, combined with the fact that they're blast or full AoE. This means her damage output is okay in single target fights, but massive for big waves. As we get more enemy types and waves with larger enemy pools, Himeko's AoE value will increase. Argenti will be coming out in 1.5, which will definitely bring more AoE based fights to promote him, and Topaz coming out soon means we have 5 weak stages for her to benefit from. She also has the highest base deck in the game. This means all attack percent buffs will scale very nicely on her, and you'll have great attack stats right off the bat. We then have her talent's ease of use in most cases. Blade needs to be hit a bunch or take enough turns to activate his AoE follow-up, requiring turns or RNG or Jingliu. Himeko however only needs breaks, and that can be activated through any ally if you build specifically for it, and of course she can activate it herself. Finally we have her high toughness damage in AoE. Constant follow-ups, AoE ultimate, blast skill, she will be popping 5 weeks enemies bars, which is perfect for her talent. For cons, her first is lack of traces. The crit trace is big but weirdly conditional even if easy to keep up, and the other 2 are kinda just sad. This combines with the fact that she doesn't self-buff all too much. This means harmony buffs are more important to her to boost the damage than most DPS. Her islands are all pretty okay too, meaning she won't scale all that well into future with extra copies. Finally, although her talent is activating a ton when building teams properly, the fact that you need to build specifically for breaks and can't brute force like top DPS is a bit annoying. So I think she still has value as a fire DPS. If you're facing fire weak, she can definitely clear that content. The only problem is that lots of limited DPS have come out, ones so strong that they can brute force content that isn't weak to their element. That will be getting harder to do as the cycle count decreases, as we've experienced already, but I think higher resistances will be needed for elements to matter more. Versus non-fire weak, it's a bit harder to use her, and versus fire resistant enemies, you shouldn't bother. Dreamy has done 0 cycles with Himeko for a couple patches now, even 0 cycling 1.4's Memory of Chaos 10 first half. Even if it's with 3 supports requiring RNG and resets, the fact that she can even do this kind of thing is really nice. Though from user submitted data, her cycle average clear count is quite high. This could be to her clearing slowly or the other side clearing slowly and ruining the average, since they can't get the proper cycle counts per side through the game as of now. If you look at teams specifically though, we can see some low average clears on both sides of Memory of Chaos 10. All I'll say is her multipliers are chunky enough to have a place in the future. She just needs strong harmony buffs, whereas a unit like QQ has great multipliers and gives herself a possible 120% damage buff and an 80% attack buff. It's a little bit unfair. Maybe Himeko's base can be improved with a break effect enabler. Either we will transition to break effect Himeko and have her fire break pop off, or we will get someone that can enable more breaks and thus more talent activations for Himeko. Remember, some chads are still fully clearing Fontaine's Abyss with Diluc, so you can use Himeko just fine. Now onto Synergies, and let's first discuss Topaz. We don't have her full kit, but we have the essence of it and her kit identity. I don't think Topaz's best synergy is Himeko, but let's discuss what she can do for Himeko. Topaz will benefit follow-up units, and also benefit from having follow-up units in the team. Himeko notably has a follow-up on her talent, and it is AoE, which avoids the problem of Proof of Debt being a single target debuff, meaning Numbi can advance forward every Himeko follow-up. Although this means only one target will take more damage from Himeko's follow-up, Numbi should provide excellent single target damage, meaning you have AoE damage out the wazoo with Topaz deleting bosses, enabling a diverse team that will obliterate all fire weak content. What's more is Asta is a great synergy for Himeko and will likely be one for Topaz too, meaning them as a trio will be even nicer. Remember, Topaz can generate skill points if the livestream gameplay is final, as her basic should count as a follow-up, so Asta and Himeko can go crazy. Let me know below what you think of this Topaz combo. The next synergy will be Asta, of course. Asta's traces combined with a Planetary Rendezvous will give you 42% fire damage for Himeko, which is equivalent to an S4 Battle Pass light cone by herself. Then you mix in the large attack percent buffs, benefiting that high base attack, alongside the speed buffs, which will always benefit most DPS, and finish off with Asta's potential SP generation. Finally, Asta can dish out large amounts of toughness damage if you don't plan on generating that SP, meaning easier breaks for Himeko's talent activations. You then have the other harmony units and the Nihility debuffers that work with like nearly all DPS, but one I like to mention is Yukong specifically. I'm not saying she's the strongest for Himeko, I don't think she is, but I like that since she can have her buffs on multiple ally turns, this means follow-ups and out-of-turn ultimates on Himeko will benefit from her large buffs. I like using this tactic specifically for Herta, who can do the same but more frequently. Silver Wolf is a nice pick for Himeko too, to enable whole extra elements worth of breaks. She has high toughness damage on top of her high damage increases for the team, meaning Himeko will be activating talents more frequently and at a deadlier damage ceiling. The high single target debuffs will also give Himeko an easier time versus elites and bosses. Finally, I like Herta for fun and for farming alongside Himeko. I've used Herta for Memory of Chaos, and Himeko is great there too, but you can't deny the power of Himeko and Herta combo in Overworld and Calix's, tearing apart the waves without you pressing a button, or the auto AI pressing a virtual button. The two as a team core might honestly work too in Memory of Chaos anyway, with a dual buffer on top. In general, she can technically be used as a talent spammer in teams with high toughness damage, but it won't be generally as strong as just having a secondary buffer in those teams. Some people are dedicated though, like these Zila Himeko gamers. Now for a quick rotation rundown for Himeko, nothing special, 4 skills to get her ultimate, 3 if you follow up enough or get some kills, and 2 if you mix in a Tingyun ult of course. You should be hitting a 3-turn ultimate if you build it around her talent. So for teams, we have the 3 rich women that are also all fire element team that I discussed earlier, having 2 DPS benefiting from Asta's buffs and using the 2 unit synergies with each other. We then have a Himekari team. This will be a formation of Himeko plus 2 Harmony or Harmony and Nihility. The strongest one will likely include Bronya. If you want Force Fire weak, you can go for a dual Quantum, dual Fire team with the arrival of Fushuan as a Quantum Solar Sustain. Dual Quantum is just as good as Silver Wolf alone with 3 Fire, since the implant chance will remain the same no matter the number of units with the same element. There's then the Hata Himeko team for follow-up fun, and that could be combined with the Topaz later down the line. You'll likely want an abundant solar sustain or a strong Fushuan to avoid losing out on the big 15% crit rate buff from her E6. Jippy can be used if you promise to Himeko that you'll never let you go. So let me know if you built Himeko or will for the upcoming Topaz and Nubby, and if you think they'll work well together. Thanks all my amazing members, thanks for watching, and have a good day.